Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Sports with Mono and Mono. It's Christmas Eve, 2021, and doing things a little differently this week because of a second positive COVID test that I just found out about. I did it out of an abundance of caution so I can go see my grandkids, but test came back positive, so that throws things into disarray, I guess. So it's very unfortunate, disappointing, but it is Christmas, so we're not doing our video this week. Actually, we're in a quarantine situation. It's unfortunate, but I guess as they say, it is what it is. But it is Christmas Eve, so welcome back to everybody. And I said, from a monologue perspective, it's unfortunate that it has to be this topic, but it's throwing a lot of things into the in the sports world into absolute chaos. This COVID situation has come back again. We thought it was, in the rearview mirror, to be quite honest with you. But unfortunately, it's not. So look at the impact that it's having. The National Hockey League is now canceled games through Christmas. And as far as the hockey goes, that means and we talked about this a little bit last week, that games are going to be canceled, and it's probably going to put the Beijing Olympics for the hockey team in cancellation mode, and that's exactly what's happening. And we can see this happening across the NBA. Games are being canceled, so we don't know again whether or not we're going to be back to playing in front of empty stadiums. It's unbelievable. NFL's schedule is being shifted and bumped and moved around, and again because of this COVID situation, and it's unfortunate. A lot of people are testing this new variant, this Omicron and whatnot. It's really throwing a lot of things into disarray, and it's unfortunate. So we're going to see how it shakes out. But like I said, we look forward to doing the show every week, and we send out our best to all our listeners and hope that they stay healthy and have a good Christmas. So again, it's really hard to believe that this is happening again. We don't know what's going to happen from day to day, and it's very unfortunate. But we take a break from this kind of craziness and we talk about sports. So I wanted to first bring up, we're going to start with the National Football League, and as always, our football segment is sponsored by Coriano Trucking of Summerhill, New York. Whatever it is, wherever it's got to go, and when it's got to get there, they'll make sure it happens. So we wish our sponsor Coriano Trucking a happy holidays as well. So we jump right into the National Football League, and a couple of things. I guess it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, right? Daniel Jones is being shut down for the year. Anytime you're dealing with a neck injury, especially for a team that's, absolutely underachieved again. Fifth year in a row, 10 losses. And it's starting to get a little bothersome, to be quite honest, if you're a New York fan, because the Jets and the Giants and they just can't seem to put together a team that can be competitive in this league, and it's kind of crazy. It really is. When we go around the National Football League and we see things that are happening, right? Cam Newton gets cut by the Patriots, and obviously for a reason, right? It looks like he's never recovered from that shoulder surgery, and never became the player that he once was from his MVP season. But when we look at what he's done, I mean, the Panthers have lost 4 straight with him starting the game. So, I mean, obviously, that's not the answer. And Carolina thought Sam Darnold was going to be the answer, and that's not the answer. So, a lot of stuff going on in the National Football League, and you see something that we never saw before. I think Tom Brady was the first time he's been shut out in a game in God, probably at least 10, 15 years. So the balance of power in the NFL is really hard to figure out week after week after week. But some positives are coming out of the National Football League. And again, we'll bring up Jonathan Taylor, who's been on Steve and I's radar for quite a while. Great player out of Wisconsin, and he's really coming into his own. Probably going to be the NFL most valuable player this year, and deservedly so. So there's so much going on. You see a bright spot like that, and I got to be quite honest. I think the Colts is a big surprise to me. I really didn't see Carson Wentz making any kind of impact in Indianapolis, but he's played pretty well. And when you got a stud running back like that, it makes things pretty easy. So we're getting down to the wire. Last few weeks of the NFL, and first time with a 17-game schedule. But I guess the usual suspects will be there when you go across the league and you look at what Patrick Mahomes has done with the Kansas City Chiefs. When we were 4 or 5 weeks into the season, everyone says, wow, that's what a disappointing year for the Chiefs. But when you got a guy like Mahomes who's out there week after week, things are going to turn around, and they certainly did. And he's playing great. You got to look and say, across the AFC, they got to be the favorites going in. Week after week, you can't figure out the Titans, right? They lose Derrick Henry, but they win some games, lose some games, beat San Francisco last night. In the NFC, Tom Brady is Tom Brady, so you have to keep them in the mix. Get some surprise teams there, though, like Philadelphia Eagles have kind of gone on a run, and Jalen Hurts is playing pretty good, and that's kind of a surprise. So when you look at the overall, balance of power in the National Football League, it's hard to figure out week after week, but you gotta figure Brady's going to be there before everything's said and done. He made his 15th Pro Bowl, and we really just got to stand in amazement in what this guy's done. 44 years old and still playing at that kind of a level. But listen, the NFC's got a lot going for it, right? The Rams are playing well. Stafford and Sean McVay for the Rams have kind of showed that this is a team to be reckoned with. So it's kind of wide open. We're going to see how this goes as we get down to the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season. But one other thing when we talk about Brady making the Pro Bowl, how about this guy Aaron Donald? And we've talked about him time and time again. Like, what a player. Like, absolutely still the best defensive player in the league. In the league 8 years, Pro Bowl 8 years, and this guy's on his way to the Hall of Fame, no question about it. Love to see a guy that just shows up week after week after week, especially when you see guys like Antonio Brown that they show up when they want to show up, they cause trouble, and that never bodes well from a team-oriented sport. So I'm liking the Rams' chance with Stafford and Donald on the defense. So a lot going on in the National Football League. We're going to get down to the wire, right? Three games left. But I got to say, the surprise guy is Jonathan Taylor, and the way he's really shown what kind of a running back, another running back from Wisconsin. Year after year, they seem to produce those kind of players, right? Going back to the Heisman Trophy days of Ron Dayne. I know he didn't pan out in the National Football League, but Wisconsin, and I think it's a reflection on Wisconsin and year after year they have an offensive line that's almost equivalent to an NFL caliber line, and it's great to see. So very happy to hear Jonathan Taylor and the success he's having. So when we move on, again, Major League Baseball, really not a lot to talk about. You don't see things. They don't seem to be able to get down to the bargaining table and start to hammer this out. Obviously, it looks like they're going to put everything on hold until 2022. We know that the situation will ultimately get resolved, but right now there's no news and no free agent signings, and you got to wonder how long this is going to last. Is it going to be settled before we go to spring training? Is it going to linger and we have another shortened season because of the lockout? A lot of things to think about. A couple other items in Major League Baseball. This guy, Mark Kotsay, named manager for the Oakland A's, which is, I guess, kind of not a surprise, although he's a first-time manager. But Oakland likes to keep things, in-house. And Bob Melvin moving to San Diego let the door open for that. And he's turned out to be a great manager. So, we wish Kotsay, who was a good player, average player in Major League Baseball, gets his first managerial gig, and year after year, the Oakland A's are there. We talk about the Yankees, like I said, really not a lot to talk about. They haven't really improved the team at all in free agency, which is, again, kind of a surprise. But now with the lockout, nothing's really going to happen. But I think the big news out of Major League Baseball, and listen, if you're a Mets fan, you got to be happy. You got to be optimistic that Buck Showalter was named the manager. Excuse me. And listen, I think the world of Buck Showalter. Wherever he goes, he wins. He's inheriting a team that's got a lot of holes in it, but this guy is he eats, sleeps, and drinks Major League Baseball, and I think it's the right move for them. Long term, Buck's only 65, and when you think about that, in today's day and age, it's not significant enough to say, it's not Tony La Russa in his 70s kind of thing, but Buck Showalter is a baseball guy. And I think, Steve Cohen taking over the team, and he's going to spend money. They've already signed Scherzer, but what a great hire for them. I'm not sure why he's been sitting around and, why he doesn't fit into other people's, other teams' long-term plans. But you know what? We wish Buck all the best, and I think he's going to do a good job for the Mets. They're going to put him right back in the mix. They do have some talent, but they're going to lose some guys too. But with DeGrom and Scherzer, they got a lot going for them. So we'll get back to baseball when there's something to talk about, because right now there's really not a lot to talk about. If we move on to the NHL, and the NHL, I mentioned in the monologue, is feeling the effects, right? There's Canadian teams, and Canada's still kind of in a lockdown mode, so games are being canceled. The season, again, I don't know whether or not it's going to be in jeopardy, but games are going to continue to be postponed, and just what we talked about before, that the NHL players will not be going to the Olympics for the second straight time, and it's unfortunate because, you got a lot of bright young stars in the National Hockey League with the McDavids and the Panarins and so forth. And, the Rangers were really starting to make some noise and show that they're a quality team to be reckoned with. And but we don't know how this is going to pan out. There will be cancellations and so forth in National Hockey League, and just don't know when the end is going to be in sight. And it's very similar in the National Basketball Association, right? Games are being canceled. The NBA's marquee time is this Christmas Day lineup, and I don't know how that's going to pan out. Games could literally be canceled hours before tip-off, and it's crazy. Because, you got a lot going on in the NBA as far as, one of the teams that I thought for sure was going to be in the mix was the Lakers, and they're not going to be in the mix. You got dominant teams like Utah and Phoenix and a lot of good talent. And, I think the Lakers are finally showing that, this is an aging team, right? LeBron, he's going to go down as one of the top 2 or 3 players of all time. Anthony Davis goes down, but the chemistry of signing Westbrook, it just didn't pan out like they were hoping. So, in the East, it really does look like, even though COVID is affecting a lot of teams and they're actually signing replacement players, I still like the Nets' chance of making the finals. Yes, they'll have to get through Milwaukee for sure, but overall, I like what they're doing. They are bringing, and I mentioned I wouldn't be talking about this individual, but they will be bringing Kyrie Irving back, and that's just an extra piece. We've never doubted what kind of a great basketball player he is, but he's decided that he wasn't going to start the season, and the Nets took a stand, which I was delighted to see. But he'll be back. He will be back before the playoff run. So, assuming this COVID situation gets under control, he'll be back full time for the Nets. And I really still like their chances at least to make the finals. But a lot of good teams. But again, the question, begs is are we going to be playing basketball games in front of empty stadiums again? And it's a real possibility. So, sticking with the, how is this situation with COVID going to affect college football? And we know on New Year's Eve we have Michigan and Georgia, and we have Alabama and Cincinnati. And when I look at those matchups, assuming that these teams are healthy, when I think about, the Michigan-Georgia game, and again, Georgia's basically been number 1 all season, but Alabama took care of them. So I'm actually thinking I may be going with Michigan in this game, assuming that it's being played. But they do have these caveats that if a team does get affected and doesn't have players to play, they forfeit. So that's the downside with college football and the playoff thing, is there's not a lot of room for postponements. So I guess I don't know what the right way to go about it, but assuming that the games will be played, I'm going to go with Michigan in this because I just don't think Georgia has enough offense, and Michigan's got a pretty good defense, and we're going to see how that pans out, assuming, the games are underway. And, the Cinderella story obviously would be Cincinnati, but, Bryce Young wins the Heisman Trophy. They showed that they could step up against a team like Georgia and put points up on the board. So, the Cinderella slipper, although, like I said, you would lean toward Cincinnati for that reason and that reason alone. It's still Alabama. It's still Nick Saban. So I'm looking for, if the games get played, a Michigan-Alabama national championship game. Excuse me, folks. Like I said, dealing with some of these mild symptoms from COVID, so I apologize for that. But college football overall, it's just, and I think we've touched on it a little bit, with the ability to transfer from one school to another. In the old days, you had to sit out, and you couldn't just do it on a whim. But when you look at overall, certain guys like Bo Nix leaving Auburn, he's been the starting quarterback there for at least 3 seasons. he's transferring, right? Looks like he's on his way to Oregon. And, Slovis from USC. And again, a lot of the transferring could be some of the coaching carousel issues we've talked about. But, Slovis is transferring to Pittsburgh. And, from a close to home perspective, Kenny Pickett probably be the number one pick in the draft from a quarterback perspective. But waiting in the wings was former St. Joe's quarterback Joe Patty. So either there's not a lot of confidence in him to pick up where Pickett left off, or they really do think this kid Slovis is going to be the heir apparent there. But I think everyone is surprised at the year Pitt had. But Pickett had a great year, finished, I think, second or third in the Heisman. But guys are transferring all over the place. And overall, when we look at college football, there were 40 bowl games, which I think is way too many. But, certain bowl games are actually being postponed. This situation with COVID is hitting teams. Texas A&M dropping out of the Gator Bowl. Again, this is going to happen more and more, and it's going to spread across multiple sports as well. So, Rutgers is going to be the fill-in in the Gator Bowl, a 5-7 team in a bowl game. That's when you say, is this even worth having 40 bowl games? But as Steve and I have talked about, what's it all about? Money. But it's happening. So there's a lot going on in college football. Don't know how many of these games. I just hope that, the Final Four, the Michigan, the Cincinnatis, the Alabamas, and Georgias, I hope they can get the games in. I hope they have a full roster of guys so it's not tainted. But it's a real situation, and so much going on. A lot of bowl games have already been played, but I don't know how many more are going to be played. So a lot going on in college football, but looking forward to the national championship, and I think they got it right this time. They got the 4 best teams in college football, and I just hope it doesn't, we don't lose that momentum because of this COVID situation, which is running rampant across all sports, college, high school, pros, you name it. But I wanted to first of all let you know that our NCAA football segment was sponsored by Lynch Toyota of Manchester, Connecticut. And listen, this is a major franchise of Toyota dealerships in the United States, and I know there's a lot of situations about, supply not being there, but you go see Mike Lynch at Lynch Toyota, and they'll make sure they put you in a nice Camry or the Toyota of your choice, and we thank them for their sponsorship week after week, year after year, and we wish them and their families all the best. I'm going to move on to our random points of interest, and a couple of crazy things. I mean, this starred for sports that Darren Williams, former NBA player, and Frank Gore, right, probably going to the Hall of Fame, second, third all-time leading rusher as it is, in a boxing match. Are you kidding me? I mean, is this where it's coming to? I'm going, that's why boxing is no longer a viable sport. It's been overtaken by this UFC stuff, which, as you guys know from past shows, I find too barbaric, and I just find it too violent. And it's just something that, when you got Jake Paul knocking out this guy Woodley, where are the boxing? We long for the days of the 70s and the 80s, and, things haven't really been the same in boxing overall. So that's one point. Another random point of interest, this kid Bailey Zappa, Western Kentucky quarterback, just broke all kinds of records that were, Joe Burrow's record, for touchdowns and yards in a season. What an unbelievable amount of production you got out of this guy. And yeah, okay, it's not Alabama football, but it's Western Kentucky. And the kid showed up, Bailey Zappa. Can this translate to the National Football League? Well, we'll see. And a lot of other things that are going on. We're kind of in an off season for tennis, but when you look at this, and has tennis been affected by this COVID situation? Absolutely. Rafael Nadal test positive for COVID, so his participation in the Australian Open, that's in question. So again, when we talk about what's been affected, everything's been affected. You gotta really put it into perspective. As much as we love sports, this is a pandemic of wide-ranging proportions, and it's just something that unfortunately is happening across all of sports, and tennis is no exception. So we're going to see how that pans out. I wanted to, like I said, this is kind of our Christmas Eve special. Not here with my partner, so we're going to keep it relatively short. But I again wanted to thank Rob Garanti for pinch hitting for Steve last week, and I think it was a good show. And, it's on blackjacktv.net, as you guys know. And if you want to watch it live on the next show, it's on Facebook at Bobby Blackjack on Facebook. And, ultimately, as Sports with Mono and Mono progresses, we're getting more and more exposure, and we thank the loyalty of all our fans so far, and we get a lot of feedback from a lot of folks at sportswithmonoandmono at gmail.com. So we wanted to bring that up. And somebody pointed out to me on last week's show that, obviously we usually close our final segment with notable passings, and I kind of glazed right over it last week. And there's a reason, because there really were no notable passings last week, but I should have mentioned that. We didn't just forget the segment, I just skipped over it because there was none. But unfortunately, this week that's not the case. It's kind of been a slow week as far as that, but I wanted to give a mention to Ryan Kelly, who's the starting center of the Indianapolis Colts. And we touched on the Colts before, what a good team they are. And, Kelly's been a starter since day one out of Alabama, but he lost his newborn baby. And, we can only imagine how impactful that is in your mindset. But our hearts go out to Ryan Kelly and his wife in the loss of their child. There was another notable passing, and again, a lot of people may not know who Robbie Roper was, but he was this, outstanding high school prospect, quarterback prospect out of Georgia, and he's 18 years old, and he passed away, which is, it looked like he was, going to be absolutely a Division I type. I don't know if I'd say phenom, but he was on the radar. Florida was looking at him, and he passed away after complications due to a surgery. So we wanted to certainly mention that part about Robbie Roper to him, and our listeners, and our heartfelt condolences go out to the Roper family from Georgia. And here's another notable, and Father Louis Trotter, who was a part of the administration at Niagara University 100 years ago when I went there. He was 97 years old, and he was at Niagara University for 38 years. And I knew him back then, and he was always a nice guy and good representative of Niagara University. Unfortunately, he passed away at 97 years old. So, R.I.P. to him. So, folks, listen, we just wanted to wish you guys all a very Merry Christmas. And, and again, time after time, thank you for your loyalty. I apologize that we don't have the video going this week, but I think you all understand why. So, again, it's Christmas Eve, and we'll be back with you, hopefully, next week with Steve and the true production of Mono and Mono. But we thank you. We wish you families all the best, and have a safe holiday, and I guess, wear a mask. Hopefully Santa's going to have his mask on so he doesn't spread the COVID to the little ones. But again, happy holidays, folks. Abbreviated edition of the show this week, but hopefully we'll be back at it next week with Steve on board. And again, all the best to you guys out there. Stay safe, enjoy the holidays, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks very much. Bye.